Hello, my name is Alexis Williams, and this is the story of how my sister's dream wedding turned into an unforgettable disaster. Not because I wanted to ruin her special day, and certainly not because of jealousy, but because the truth has a way of coming to the surface, no matter how deeply it's buried. I was adopted into the Williams family when I was just 7 months old. My parents, especially my father Bobby Williams, always ensured I felt like I belonged. He never treated me any differently from Sarah, the daughter they had biologically 3 years after adopting me. Growing up, I believed we were the perfect family. I never suspected that secrets were being quietly tucked away behind our picture-perfect smiles. My father owned Williams Innovation Lab, a small but ambitious research and development firm that created custom solutions for manufacturing companies. His work was his passion, and I remember watching him stay up late into the night, buried in project blueprints and business proposals. While Sarah was dazzling everyone with her dance recitals and beauty pageant crowns, I found myself drawn to the world my father had built. By the time I was a teenager, I was already spending my summers interning at his company, absorbing every bit of knowledge I could. After earning my degree in engineering, I joined the company full-time as a project manager. That was 10 years ago. Since then, I've climbed the ladder to become the Chief Innovation Officer. Under my guidance and my father's mentorship, we transformed Williams Innovation Lab into a powerhouse in the industry, now worth over $370 million. Sarah, meanwhile, had carved out her path. She became a popular social media influencer, showcasing her glamorous life, offering relationship tips, and collecting followers by the thousands. Despite our very different worlds, we remained close, or so I thought. The tension began when Sarah announced her engagement to Gabriel Blackwood, the heir of Blackwood Technologies, our biggest rival in the tech world. It was a shocking pairing, but our mother couldn't have been happier. "This is going to be perfect for both families," she said with a sparkle in her eye at the lavish engagement party held at our estate. The guest list was elite. Everyone who mattered in tech and business was there. The champagne never stopped flowing, the orchestra played softly in the background, and the mansion glittered with celebration. But underneath all the glamour, something didn't feel right. People had started acting strange around me in the weeks leading up to the party. Conversations would abruptly stop when I entered the room. Board members began avoiding my emails. Most disturbingly, Dad, my mentor, my rock, had been distant, finding excuses to cancel our usual one-on-one meetings. Still, I tried to brush off the feeling that something was wrong. Then it happened. Sarah stood at the top of the grand staircase, glowing in a designer gown under the chandelier lights. Gabriel stood beside her, smiling confidently, the future CEO of Blackwood Technologies. She raised her champagne glass to make a toast, her voice cutting through the room like a bell. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate our engagement," she said, beaming. Then her tone shifted slightly. "But there's something important we need to address tonight." My heart sank. Her eyes locked with mine in the crowd. "Alexis, dear sister," she said sweetly, too sweetly, "we need to talk about the money." The room fell silent. I froze. "What money?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The $6 million, she said, pausing for dramatic effect. "The money you've been embezzling from the company for the past year." The words hit me like a slap. The crowd gasped. Whispers erupted around the room. I looked toward Dad, hoping, praying he would stand up and defend me. But he wouldn't even meet my eyes. And just like that, the night that was supposed to mark the union of two powerful families became the beginning of a scandal that would tear everything apart. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. My father, the man who raised me, the man I trusted more than anyone, stared at the floor in silence. I turned to him in disbelief, barely able to form the words. "What are you talking about?" "I would never steal from the company." Before I could say more, Gabriel, Sarah's fiancé, stepped forward, holding a sleek folder in his hand. "We have proof," he said coldly. He opened the folder and revealed a stack of printed financial records. Charts, spreadsheets, and transaction logs. "These documents show a clear pattern of theft," he continued. "Funds redirected through a network of hidden transactions, all traced back to your personal accounts." I felt the air drain from the room. The walls felt like they were closing in. My chest tightened, and everything began to spin. I turned to my father again, desperate for him to see through the lies. "Dad, please, you know I would never steal. Everything I've done, every late night, every project, I did it for the company. For us." "Save it," Sarah snapped, her voice sharp like broken glass. Her face twisted with bitterness. "You're just the adopted one, always trying to take what doesn't belong to you. This company, this family, it's not yours. It never was. It's time you paid back what you stole." The silence that followed her cruel words was louder than any scream. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my ears. I waited for anyone to speak up, to tell her she was wrong, to tell me I still belonged. Instead, my father raised his eyes at last and said quietly, "The evidence is quite clear, Alexis. I think it would be best if you resigned immediately. We won't press charges if you return the money." And just like that, everything I believed about my life, my family, and my place in it crumbled. 30 years of loyalty, love, and sacrifice, gone in an instant. I carefully placed my champagne glass on a nearby table. "You want me to resign?" I said, steadying my voice.
"Fine."
"I quit. But I'd advise you to take a closer look at those financial records before making accusations you'll regret." Without another word, I turned and walked out of the party. The eyes of 100 guests burned into my back. Whispers followed me like shadows. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Just as I reached my car, Sarah's voice rang out from the mansion doorway. "And don't forget to return your company laptop and phone. We wouldn't want you deleting any evidence." I almost laughed. Even with tears welling in my eyes, I managed to smile. Sarah had always been obsessed with appearances, with being perfect. But what she never cared about was the actual work. She had no idea how the company really functioned, or what I had been quietly preparing for years. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the comforting hum of my machines. I opened my laptop and accessed a secure server, one that neither Sarah nor Gabriel knew existed. For the last 4 years, I'd been keeping meticulous records. Every suspicious transaction, every questionable decision, every whisper of wrongdoing. It was all there. I had learned from watching other companies collapse under the weight of betrayal. I had learned to prepare. And now, I had everything I needed to prove who had been stealing from the company. Sarah's wedding was just 2 weeks away. She had planned a lavish ceremony at the city's most elite venue. Over 680 guests were expected, including major executives, investors, and media. It was supposed to be the social event of the year. But I had a different plan. Sometimes, the truth doesn't come quietly. Sometimes, it arrives dressed in white, just in time to crash a perfect wedding. Revenge, I've learned, isn't always about destroying someone's future. The real power lies in uncovering the truth they've buried in their past and watching it rise to meet them. That night, as I got ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Don't even think about showing up at the wedding. Security has your photo." I stared at the screen for a moment, then smiled and sent back a single emoji, a smiley face. She had no idea. I didn't need an invitation to walk into that wedding. What she didn't remember was that I personally designed the entire security system for the venue. Every camera, every lock, every line of code. I had written it. The next 6 days would change everything. But first, I had work to do. While Sarah was busy planning her perfect day, I was quietly orchestrating something far more important. In the week leading up to the wedding, I made several phone calls that would shake the foundations of Williams' Innovation Labs. I met with financial regulators and provided them with hard evidence of the embezzlement. I reached out to trusted contacts in the tech world, preparing them for what was coming. But the most important call I made was to someone Sarah and Gabriel had completely forgotten: old Albert. Albert had been one of the first programmers at Williams' Innovation Labs. He built our core systems from the ground up and had been with my dad since the beginning. Sarah and Gabriel assumed he retired 7 months ago. What they didn't know was that Albert still had backdoor access to every major system in the company. I had asked him to quietly monitor activity over the past year. And now it was time to collect. Got Everything? I texted him at 9 a.m. on the day of the wedding. All downloaded and verified, he replied. They never changed the master passwords. Amateurs. I grinned at the message. For all of Sarah's scheming and posturing, she'd overlooked the most basic things. She had no idea that every dollar she accused me of stealing was funneled into offshore accounts belonging to Gabriel's family. At exactly 3 p.m., I parked my car 2 blocks away from the St. Regis Hotel. The wedding ceremony was set to begin at 5 p.m. in the Grand Ballroom. I knew the place well. For years earlier, my team at Williams Innovation Labs had designed and installed the hotel's entire security infrastructure. Cameras, alarms, biometric locks. I had built the digital skeleton of the place. While Sarah was likely sipping champagne in her makeup chair, I walked through the service entrance wearing a maintenance uniform and a quiet smile. A few members of the kitchen staff nodded in recognition. Many of them had been around during the original installation. The biometric doors still recognized my fingerprints. Another oversight. I made my way to the control room, where Kevin, the head of security, sat sipping coffee and watching monitors. His eyes widened when he saw me. Alexis? They said you were banned from the building. I handed him a small USB drive and met his gaze. Remember last year when that data breach nearly cost you your job? Who fixed that for you? He blinked, nodded, and pocketed the drive. What do you need? Just a favor, I said, smiling. A quiet one. 14 minutes later, I was sitting high above the Grand Ballroom in the upper-level control booth. Below me, the elite of the tech industry were beginning to arrive. CEOs, investors, influencers, all dressed to impress. The room sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the hush of whispered ambition. My mother stood at the entrance, greeting guests in an expensive new dress. My father was nearby, speaking with Gabriel's parents. They were probably talking about the merger, how this wedding would symbolize the powerful union of 2 tech giants. They had no idea that everything was about to unravel. Just yesterday, the headlines had splashed across the business world. Blackwood Technologies to merge with Williams Innovation Labs in historic tech alliance. What they didn't say, but what I knew, was the truth. This merger was nothing more than a lifeline to save Blackwood from collapse. And it was being paid for with stolen money. My money. The same money Sarah accused me of embezzling just a week ago. It was nearly 5 p.m. when Sarah finally made her grand entrance. She descended the marble staircase like a queen stepping onto a stage, her designer gown flowing behind her, a radiant smile carefully painted on her face. Photographers buzzed around her, capturing every calculated angle of perfection. At the altar, Gabriel stood tall and smug, every bit the charming groom he pretended to be. I waited, patiently, silently. The ballroom, dressed in luxury and ambition, buzzed with anticipation. The minister began the ceremony, speaking solemnly to the crowd of elite guests. Then came the moment I had been waiting for, the question no one ever really expects to be answered. If anyone here has a reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. That was my cue. From my hidden perch in the upper control booth, I triggered the program Albert and I had quietly built over the past week. Instantly, the room dimmed. The massive screens, originally set to display wedding photos and video montages, lit up with a new presentation. At the top, bold letters flashed, the truth about the Williams family fortune. Gasps echoed around the room. Conversation stopped. And then the evidence began. One by one, the screens displayed a timeline of financial records, emails, and secret transaction logs, each document more damning than the last. The audience sat frozen as proof of corporate theft, embezzlement, and betrayal scrolled across the screens. Every lie, every cover-up, every dollar was stolen, laid bare for hundreds of guests to see, including investors, journalists, and executives from nearly every major tech company. Sarah's perfect day unraveled in seconds. At first, she looked confused. Then panic spread across her face like wildfire as the truth sank in. She turned to Gabriel, demanding, "Turn it off. Shut it down." But there was nothing he could do. The systems were locked. They only answered to me. Then came the final blow, a recorded conversation from 2 months earlier. The ballroom fell deadly silent as Sarah's voice filled the air, crystal clear and sharp as a knife. Once we frame Alexis for the missing money, Dad will have no choice but to hand the company over to me. Gabriel replied, "She's just the adopted brat. She never deserved any of it. Once the merger's done, we'll sell off Williams's assets to pay off Blackwood's debts. Your dad won't know what hit him." A collective gasp spread across the room. The screens switched again, this time showing security footage of Sarah and Gabriel in his office, carefully falsifying financial records, creating the perfect trail to frame me. The room erupted in chaos. Gasps, shouts, whispers. And then I stepped out of the control booth. I walked calmly down the aisle, heels echoing against the marble floor, while the entire room turned to watch me. Sarah stood frozen in her white dress, no longer the glowing bride, but a woman crumbling beneath the weight of her lies. Mascara ran down her cheeks. Her hands trembled. "Security," she shrieked when she saw me. "Get her out of here." I stopped at the edge of the stage and looked her dead in the eye. "They work for me," I said softly. "Or rather, they work for Williams Innovation Lab's security division. The same one I built from the ground up." At that moment, my father stepped forward, his face pale and stunned. "Alexis," he said, his voice small. I raised a hand. "Don't," I whispered, my voice steady. "You told me the evidence was clear. Well, now everyone can see it." And just like that, the lies that had fueled Sarah's perfect day came crashing down. The wedding was over, but the reckoning had just begun. I cut him off before he could speak. "Check your email," I said calmly. "You'll find everything you just saw on the screens, plus detailed documentation of every innovation I contributed to the company, every client I brought in, every milestone I helped us reach. You'll also find my resignation terms. You have 1 hour to accept them." Gabriel's face twisted with anger. "You're bluffing," he snapped. "You've got nothing." I didn't flinch. "The SEC disagrees," I said with a quiet smile. "They're very interested in Blackwood Technologies' creative accounting methods, as are your shareholders." I glanced at several board members in the crowd, their faces pale and speechless. They had come expecting champagne and celebration, and now they were staring down the beginning of a corporate meltdown. I turned to Sarah, locking eyes with her. "You were right about one thing," I said. "I'm not a real Williams. I'm better. I took that company and built it into something powerful while you were busy taking selfies and scheming behind closed doors." Mom took a hesitant step toward me, looking desperate to restore order or maybe dignity. I stopped her with a raised hand. "Don't," I said softly. Then I turned to the crowd, my voice steady and clear. "My terms are simple. I take 53% ownership of Williams Innovation Labs, effective immediately. Sarah and Gabriel are to be permanently removed from any association with the company, and Dad," I looked directly at him, "you can stay on as the public face, the figurehead CEO. But all your decision-making power, all voting rights, they go to me." Sarah's voice cracked with disbelief. "And if we refuse?" "Then I release everything," I said coldly. "All the documents, the recordings, the financial trails, it all goes to the press. Williams Innovation Labs might survive that kind of scandal. Blackwood Technologies definitely won't." Gasps rippled across the room. Gabriel's parents looked horrified. Guests were already heading for the exits, whispers swirling like a storm. I turned back to the remaining crowd. "I suggest you all go home," I said. "There's not going to be a wedding today." The next few hours passed in a blur, lawyers arriving in sleek black cars, paperwork exchanged, signatures scribbled in tense silence, and tears shed in hidden corners. By midnight, it was official. I held a controlling interest in the company I had poured my heart into for over a decade. Blackwood Technology stock had plummeted into chaos, and Sarah's picture-perfect wedding had become the biggest scandal of the year. 1 week later, I sat behind a new desk, Dad's old office, now mine. Sunlight poured through the windows as I reviewed acquisition offers for the shattered remains of Blackwood Technologies. The irony didn't escape me. A quiet knock broke the silence. The door opened, and there stood my father. He looked tired, older than I'd ever seen him. The weight of everything hung heavy on his shoulders. "I should have believed in you," he said softly. "Yes," I replied. "You should have." He hesitated, as if choosing his next words carefully. "Can we fix this?" I looked at him for a long moment. There was sadness in his eyes, maybe even regret. But some things, once broken, can't be fully repaired. "Maybe," I said, "but not as father and daughter. You lost that the day you stood by while they destroyed me." He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, then turned and walked away, leaving me with the company, the truth, and the power to write my ending. But as business partners, I said, letting the words hang in the air, "We'll see." He looked at me for a long moment, eyes full of a quiet sorrow that came too late to matter. Then he nodded, the weight of everything finally sinking in, and walked out of my office without another word. I turned back to the window, watching the city skylines stretch into the horizon, glowing gold in the evening sun. The world looked different now, like I had finally stepped into the space I had been carving out for years, but had never been allowed to truly claim. My phone buzzed beside me. It was a text from Sarah. "I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything." I stared at the screen for a while, my face unreadable. But I didn't reply. Some apologies come too late. And some wounds, no matter how sincere the regret, leave scars that don't fade. People often say success is the best revenge. But I've learned that isn't quite true. The best revenge? It's making people confront the lies they built their world on. It's not shouting or destroying. It's showing the truth so clearly that they can never pretend it didn't happen. It's leaving them with the mess they made and walking away stronger. Sarah wanted a wedding the world would remember. And she got it, just not in the way she imagined. Her perfect day turned into a public unraveling, her lies exposed before the very crowd she wanted to impress. As for me, I'm still the same person. I still love building things, still love creating new ideas and pushing boundaries. That hasn't changed. What has changed is this. Now, everyone knows exactly what I'm capable of. They've seen it, and no one will ever look at me and say, "She's just the adopted one." Again, not anymore.